A listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, we take a look at the latest research that shows there is no link between paracetamol use in pregnancy and a greater risk of the baby developing autism or ADHD. In one of the largest reviews of its kind, we unpack the new results that contradict the bombshell allegations made by the US administration about paracetamol use last year. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Tuesday, the 20th of January. A last-minute deal between the Liberal Party and Labor has seen a watered-down version of hate laws pass their first hurdle in Parliament. The Prime Minister and Opposition Leader Susan Lee agreeing to a set of changes to Labor's original legislation. Here is Anthony Albanese in Parliament.
I've said that we would implement in full the recommendations of the Anti-Semitism Envoy's report. Unfortunately, some of those recommendations, the most serious ones about vilification, did not receive the support of either the Coalition or the Greens in the Senate and therefore were not able to be pursued.
The amendments have passed the lower house and will be now debated in the Senate later this evening. Meantime, the gun reform legislation has also passed the House of Representatives and has progressed to the upper house, where senators are expected to vote on that legislation at 6:30pm. But Nationals leader David Littleproud says extremism, not guns, is the issue.
This is nothing more than a cheap political diversion, that is not facing up to the real problem in this country, which is radical Islamists that are taking hold and are causing the harm on the streets that we saw in Bondi. It is not the gun owners of Australia that have done this, it is radical Islam that has done this.
Beaches along the mid-north coast of New South Wales have been closed after another shark attack. A 39-year-old man escaped serious injury after a shark bit through his board while he was surfing near Port Macquarie. It's the fourth confirmed shark attack in New South Wales in just 48 hours. Beaches along Sydney's north also remain closed after another surfer was attacked by a shark at Manly late yesterday. He remains in hospital in a critical condition after having his leg amputated. It comes after a teenager had his surfboard attacked by a shark near Dee Why early yesterday, and another young swimmer was also mauled on Sunday afternoon at Vaucluse in Sydney's east. Experts are pleading with swimmers to stay out of the water over the next few days, warning the surf is not safe because of recent wild weather. Here's shark bite expert Professor Chris Pemperneff.
In the last week, we've had 131 millimetres of rain. So the rain is the issue, but it's the confluence of water temperature and, I would say, sewage overflow from the pipes that's exciting the sharks and bringing them into the shore. And also because sewage tends to float, the bait fish are at the surface and the bull sharks are closer to the surface. And this is a risky environment.
And you can hear more from Professor Pemperneff in tomorrow's episode of The Briefing. And get ready for a spectacle in the sky tonight with the Bureau of Meteorology issuing an aurora alert amid a rare surge in solar activity. A powerful burst of energy from the sun, the strongest in more than 20 years, is expected to reach Earth tonight, increasing the chance of vivid aurora australis displays. Residents in Tasmania, Victoria, South Australia and parts of southern WA will have the best opportunity to see the lights, with peak viewing expected between 10pm and 2am. Meantime, satellite and GPS disruptions are possible. Experts say this could be one of the most spectacular southern light shows in decades. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the latest research on the use of paracetamol and its links to ADHD and autism in children. In September last year, the US administration urged pregnant women to avoid taking Tylenol, falsely claiming a number of studies reported associations with ADHD and autism in children. Leading health experts across the world, including Australia's TGA, rejected those claims, reaffirming it was safe for pregnant women to take paracetamol when needed and to seek advice from their GP if concerned. Over the weekend, new findings were published in a leading and prestigious medical journal and has again found there is no increased risk of a child developing autism and/or ADHD if their mother takes paracetamol. Joining us to explain these latest developments and this important new advice for pregnant women is Professor Helen Leonard, Principal Research Fellow at the Kids Research Institute of Australia. Helen, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us about this new research from the Lancet Obstetrics, Gynecology and Women's Health Journal. Exactly what does this new research show?
Well, it's a new research. It's a systematic review and also a meta-analysis. A systematic review means that it looks at all the articles in the literature about this topic, sifts through them and finds the ones that are relevant to the question. The question is, does Panadol, or aminocytopin as it's called in the US, increase the risk of autism, ADHD or intellectual disability in children when mothers are taking this during their pregnancy? And they found, I think it was 46 articles out of the much larger number they collected that were relevant to this. And then they further analysed 17 of these articles. And they found no increased risk in any of these neurodevelopmental disorders when the mother had taken, Panadol in the pregnancy. So that's the findings in a nutshell.
So, Helen, in regards to mixed information, we saw last year in particular the US administration suggested that taking paracetamol during pregnancy may increase the risk of autism among children. So, for parents out there or parents-to-be, how confusing is it for them that we've got the US administration coming out and saying this or alleging this, and then we've got another study coming through saying, well, no, there is no risk or no association. So what do we know with this latest research? Is it 100% correct, and how can we guarantee that it is right?
I mean, you can never say that any research is 100% correct, but it's more rigorous than the other study, and it accounts for confounders. And it also includes studies of siblings. So when you have siblings and you compare it to sibling pregnancies, you account for the environmental factors, you account for the family factors and genetic factors, and that's all accounted for. And therefore you get a much more honest, real answer than if you use all the studies and don't account for this. So that's one of the big strengths of this study compared with the one that was referred to in the US, which didn't have that rigor. I mean, it is challenging, I acknowledge, but I think that is the major difference. All the analysis in this study were adjusted for other factors. They just didn't look at whether a mother took Panadol and had a baby. They adjusted for the other things, whether it was her first baby, whether she had other chronic conditions, because the conditions for which she might be taking Panadol might well be the reason for the child having a neurodevelopmental disorder. So that's an example of a confounding factor.
So, Helen, in regards to the really interesting element of this study in the Lancet, which is a very prestigious medical journal, you mentioned before there what was really important to note was the sibling comparisons. So can you explain that? So does that mean the researchers look at the mother has had one child and then what she consumed during that pregnancy compared to what she may have consumed during the second pregnancy with the sibling? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So everything else should be the same, apart from the fact that she took the Panadol in one pregnancy and not the other. And we use that mechanism quite a lot in studies, but you do need to have big numbers to be able to do that. And the Swedish study that was included had very big numbers.
What type of numbers are you talking about? Because as we know, the research that we really should be looking at is when they actually research a lot of people and also in different countries.
think it was about 5,000. I can't remember exactly in the Swedish study. But the Scandinavian studies are very, very rigorous because they have registers and they can do the best research, really.
So if you can explain to me why it's so important in these studies to have sibling comparisons, can you explain exactly how that works?
Well, for instance, with autism, there's a lot of interest in whether environmental factors are a causal factor in autism. But if you're looking at siblings, you can pretty well assume that the family environment is going to be the same in both siblings. So you don't need to adjust for that in the analysis. Also, the genetics. If you've got two siblings, they will have the equivalent genetics. So you're accounting for the genetic factor as well. So you're accounting for these factors, which, as we say, are confounders. Confounders could be actually the reason for the link with autism.
Okay, so in regards to when they're actually doing these sibling comparisons, the researchers will look at whether the mother of the carrier of the baby was actually consuming paracetamol or not during a number of pregnancies. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes, yeah.
And in consideration of your professional opinion, we know that this has been incredibly confronting for a lot of parents and really concerning on what they should be doing or not doing when they're pregnant. What advice would you give for parents when they're looking at this research to be able to work out, okay, what's correct and what's not correct, and what advice should I take?
Well, I mean, we believe that this shows that Panadol is not a risk factor. But what they must do is they must consult their doctor. So that's really important. Even they shouldn't just look at the media and decide, but they should do it in conjunction with their doctor. And I would assume that the doctor would follow the international guidelines which say that the Panadol is safe. So I think we must always remember to tell mothers to consult their doctor, who should be able to provide the best advice. But it seems that this is the best advice, to take, because fever is dangerous. Fever can cause problems to the unborn child. And that's why we don't want to avoid taking an analgesic, and Panadol is the safest of the analgesics.
I was just about to ask you that question, Helen, because there was concern when all of this information came out from the US administration that if, for whatever reason, that mothers-to-be or parents-to-be did not take paracetamol, especially when they were incredibly unwell, that could cause actually more damage to the mum-to-be or to the unborn baby. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, exactly. It could cause a premature delivery. It could be associated with certain birth defects. So these are major problems associated with fever and pregnancy. Yeah.
There is a lot of research going on at the moment, Helen, not only in Australia but right around the world. What does the latest research show about what the possible links could be with ADHD and also in regards to autism? Is it really pointing towards genetic susceptibility?
I would say with autism, we've got a lot of evidence to say that a lot of it is genetic. Yes. We have undertaken a study, which is a combined study from Australia, Scandinavia, and a number of other countries. So it's got a massive number of children in it. And the analysis pointed to a shared genetic factor more than anything else, because autism recurs in families. So that our findings were more of a genetic than an environmental cause for autism. That may not be the same with intellectual disability or ADHD, but this was what we found with autism. Yeah.
We really appreciate you joining us today, Helen. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem at all.
That was Professor Helen Leonard. And that's it for this episode of The Briefing. We'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning with a deep dive on the surge in shark attacks in New South Wales. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Natarsha Belling. See you next time.